I'm really happy to have Iso here and introduce him a little bit. Iso Kant is the CEO and co-founder of Athenian. So welcome, Iso. Thank you for being here with us.
Always happy to be here, Luca. It's nice to see what you've built. I remember you talking about it in the early days before it started, so it's very cool. Over the years, I went from not just being passionate about building things, I became passionate about how we built them. This led me to lots of other programming languages, to programming language design, to machine learning, to static analysis, and a whole bunch of other crazy stuff. And usually, over that kind of next following decades, when I was writing code, it was really to often build things for other developers or libraries or developer tools. And that led me previously to start a developer tooling company in the space of machine learning on code. What we were doing was really building the infrastructure to do large-scale source code analysis with ML. And then several years ago, I found myself in the opportunity to start a new company. And anybody who knew me back then would have thought that I would probably build something pretty hardcore. So like, I don't know, security policies based on eBPF filtering or crazy machine learning on source code to generate automatic test suites or stuff like this. But what I realized I'd become very passionate about was to helping engineers and engineering organizations deliver more value to their end user, like build software better, build it faster. And I saw that tons of people around me were building tools for developers, just like I had been doing. But very, very few people were actually building tools for us engineering leaders. And as engineering leaders, if we think about the tool set that we get to use that's actually built for us, well, not really anything. We'll use Jira and GitHub as kind of sparring partners to the engineers that we're working with, if we're still in a position where we manage engineers. But once I'm a director or a VP and I'm at a larger org, that becomes even further apart. And for the rest, we use email, Slack, and Zoom as kind of our tool set. And that led me to start questioning, like, hey, what's the leverage that an engineering leader has on an organization? Can an engineering leader really make the organization improve significantly? And because I'd been building a developer tooling company, I got to spend time with hundreds of engineering orgs. And I realized that the best running engineering organizations had the best engineering leaders. And I think this is maybe one thing I always stress, particularly to ICs who are thinking about becoming an engineering leader, like a team leader in EM, is that you have to give up coding at some point, right? And that's just a reality. Maybe you can get away with it as a team lead for a while, but the moment you go above being a team lead and you manage multiple teams or multiple managers of managers, you're never writing a line of code at your work again, which really sucks. I think we can all agree that just sucks. Like it's not. But so we have to find satisfaction in having leverage somewhere else. And the leverage that we get to have is that we get to see that work improving the teams that work for us and work with us. So here, this is a map of Lisbon. And when we're a small engineering organization, this is kind of the level of visibility we have. We know the tickets that are moving, we know the CI runs, we know what's happening on the work, we probably know which PRs are pending right now for us. And if we're managing a single team, the more work and the busier we get, essentially, and as the organization grows, the less visibility we end up having. And we've all been there. We all get that feeling at some point. And this is not always related purely to size of your team or your organization or your role. This also just happens with the increasing demands on you as an engineering leader. And the truth is, if you one day are VP of engineering and you're responsible all of a sudden for 50, 100, 150 or 200 engineers, you're at best having this level of visibility, if you're lucky. How do we go from this like high level visibility to knowing where we need to zoom in? Because what makes us engineering leaders is that we still have to zoom in and zoom out all the time. There's a challenge, there's a bottleneck, something needs to be figured out and improved that has a leverage on the team, leverage on the company. What is that? Where do I zoom in? Is it the CI system that's slowing us down? Is it the fact that we're having a huge bug backlog that we're not able to burn down? Is it the fact that our code base is slowing us down and we need to pay down tech debt? You know, all of the challenges that we're constantly coming across, we need to know which ones those are, and we need to know when to zoom in and understand where the problems are. And the truth is, and in our experience kind of, we started Athenian because we saw the best engineering leaders doing this. They were using data. And there are three areas that I would say every engineering org, particularly as they kind of go above 30 people, should be having right now. And then when you're smaller, these are things that you should know anyways, even if you don't have the data. Velocity is how fast are we moving and where are the bottlenecks in the team and for the process. Quality is what's the quality of the software that we deliver and how do we respond to quality issues. And with quality, what we're talking about is quality that impacts the end user, right? Bugs, incidents, downtime, etc. And outcome is really where are we investing our efforts? What are we shipping? Where are we investing our efforts between building new features versus paying down tech debt versus fixing bugs versus maintenance or R&D? Like, how are we actually dividing our efforts? Because as an engineering leader, we're constantly making trade-offs, either consciously or subconsciously. We're going to move faster here, but we'll allow for some tech debt, meaning our quality is going to suffer in 6 months, but it's okay because it's the right thing for the business. We're now going to invest, the next month, 80% of our effort to get rid of all the high priority bugs, which means we're investing less in shipping new features, but it's the right thing for the business. And I think one thing worth always stressing is, we exist because the business exists, which means that we're always making these trade-offs in the context of what the priority for the company is. Here's where we want to put a lot of pressure on moving fast. We want to make a couple of smart decisions to avoid massive tech debt in the future, but we want to take on a healthy amount of it in the early days, because otherwise we're not probably moving fast enough and then the business is not going to survive. And then, well, it doesn't matter how great the code base is. But we want to start having some processes in place that make a good developer experience. But we're still at the stage where we can do this pretty organically. And if you have a good engineering leader here, they will make sure that we don't overinvest in a perfect code base, to overinvest in processes, and kind of keep that healthy balance between, moving fast and starting to think about the future. When we go from 20 to 100, there's a lot of shit that hits the fan. In the early days, the truth is, the bugs that come in are easily manageable. You can handle them, you can tag them pretty well, you know who to assign them to. You're going to prioritize the right bugs because you're a small enough team to figure out hey, this bug is, stopping us from making these customers happy or making this revenue. And you're still able to move pretty quickly. But there comes a point, for some companies, it comes at 10 engineers, for others, it comes at 30 or 40, depending on the product or tech stack, where your number of bugs and critical incidents start increasing so much that your teams stop feeling that they're able to work on anything but essentially quality topics. And once we're at that place, we really need incredibly strong bug backlog management. We need to start getting really in place MTTR and metrics that allow us to see how we're doing on bugs, how fast we're solving them. We need really to understand that that criticality levels that we set on bugs are well set, have different SLAs, and you need to understand where you're going to invest in fixing bugs and where you're going to invest in paying down tech debt or refactoring, and where you just say this is an acceptable level of quality issues that we won't be able to tackle because otherwise we're not moving forward on anything else. As an engineering leader, we're constantly making trade-offs, and really how we see that change as we grow is in the early days, you're going from the decisions that you made when you were just a couple of people to start seeing how they slow you down once you start becoming 10, 15, 20 engineers. But the truth is, in the very early days, the only thing that matters is that you get product market fit in your business. And if that's a topic for your business, you just got to do whatever it takes to get there. And that means move fast and ship experiments, right? Decent quality, but just ship experiments, try stuff. But if you are the moment you start seeing or have a strong belief we're going to succeed, and even early on, you'll want to start thinking about how do we manage our bugs? How do we actually improve the experience for the developers? You almost always, if you can, want to think about architecture decisions that would at least scale a little bit, but not too much. And once you get kind of past 20 engineers, and by the way, these numbers will differ for every company because it's also company and stage specific, but these are just relatively good indications based on our experience. You need to start focusing on fixing bugs and cleaning up tech debt. Because if you don't, your next phase of growth is going to be one where you're just overwhelmed and unable to ship any new features. It's really when engineering leaders understand that they need cultures of continuous improvement, and that when you support them with data, you can start really informing the decision-making process, prioritizing where you're going to invest your efforts. Are we putting our efforts in improving our CI system or our review process? Are we going to communicate to the team that we should be putting 20% of our effort in paying down tech debt versus 10% before? And getting the team to align around these goals and objectives. Because one thing is saying we need to go improve X. The other thing is going to say, hey, in the coming quarter, we're going to work on bringing our time from initial commit to production from 2 days down to 24 hours. We're going to do that with these different initiatives that are owned by these different teams. On this team, we're going to look at, release frequency that's going to improve to help get there. On this team, we're going to focus on PR size decreasing so that we get smaller chunks of work moving faster. Here, we're going to change the fact that this team no longer has to be dependent on the other for things to be merged. And so you start making it very concrete. To me, metrics and data have a role to play in this. But as I mentioned earlier, they're absolutely useless without context. What's true today on a metric cannot be true tomorrow. In terms of the context, relation on the team, the business, everything changes. So use them as a tool, but don't use them as like a true north or what I would say, a dogmatic way of thinking about this. As engineering, we're often looking for the hard and fast rules. Great, if I make this metric the goal for the organization, we're all going to be better. No, we have to bring nuance to this. This is just one more tool set in things that we get to do. So yeah, so that's a little bit about the things that we see as organization skill, how we can help tackle it, and kind of curious to get your questions and hear what you're thinking. So based on our experience from all the companies we see, if a company is less than 30 engineers, we usually tell them this: you probably shouldn't go hardcore on implementing metrics yet, unless you yourself are a big champion of building this in the culture early on. And so we have some clients that are like 5 engineers, and this is just part of their culture, and it works because the engineering leader there is very passionate about it. This is the same why a good Scrum process or Agile process doesn't really need when you're 5 engineers. But if you have someone who's great and is passionate and makes it part of the culture, it can be a good thing. This is a hugely discussed topic in our industry. If you actually go to the Developing Leadership podcast, we have a 3-part series on the different levels in engineering and how to think about this. But I'm going to try to give you a summary answer that's maybe more useful. Never, ever, ever promote someone to be an engineering manager just because they're technically the best person.
I would just saying I would be very happy to read that blog post too. I have many friends that work in agencies, and they maybe read refactoring, but not everything that I write, they are able to apply that to their daily work, right? So it's a totally different world. And it's interesting to understand where there is the overlap and where things are really different. So yeah, so thank you so much, Iso, for being with us, for having this talk, and thank you Fabrizio, Michael, Camo, and Jas was just gone. For being with us. We have recorded everything, so we will post it on the community, so you will definitely hear from us. So thank you everyone again.
Thank you guys so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.